Hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we are speaking with Philip Oloo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Founder of Specialists, an architectural visualization company that focuses on all aspects of realistic 3D rendering and virtual reality to achieve realistic results for developers, architects, interior designers, and so on. Philip's innovative approach allows clients to fully immerse themselves in residential and commercial designs, providing an unparalleled interactive experience that brings space to life, reduces design costs, and leads to greater project satisfaction. I'm interested in speaking with Philip for two reasons here. Philip grew up in Kenya in a house that often did not have electricity and somehow made his way to the US and has found success here. I've always found interest in the contrast of cultures and how people come to a new place and tend to be very successful. It's very interesting to me. But his experience with both the design world in creating specialists and his process of getting to there are something that I think will be of a great interest to talk to him about. So give it up for Philip Oloo. Hey, Philip. How you doing? I'm interested in talking to you for primarily two reasons. The first one, obviously, is you're in the architectural design space through the visualization of the virtual reality, ability to create that for architects, designers, engineers, and the like to show their clients that. And I'm interested in talking about where you see the benefits, but also the potential pitfalls of moving that from kind of hand sketch, handmade to more AI driven in a sense. And then also your personal journey of coming from somewhere where you occasionally didn't have electricity to being a tech entrepreneur. So that's an interesting trajectory. I always find it interesting, people that come from outside the US to come to the US and have success, like the guy who runs the Indian restaurant here in town, Prem. He came to the US with $20 in his pocket, and he's got 2 or 3 restaurants running, a house paid off. He's doing amazing because he sees the potential here and he went for it. So those are all kind of vastly interesting things to me to talk about. So if you wouldn't mind starting just with where you're from, your upbringing, and how you got to where you are today, and then kind of what you're doing today.
I came from Kenya, and it was very competitive. You know, it's almost like very competitive in business, in life, in opportunity, because they're not so much. So there's not so many opportunities in different areas. You have to really kind of know someone, or your parents have kind of influence or something, where they can just talk to someone and say, "Hey, please have my kid go to this school. Come on,
Right.
that kind of stuff." But if you don't have that, it's really tough. It's really, really difficult. And it's not difficult in like you're walking on downtown to get a job. It's difficult in many aspects, in
Right.
health, in education, in opportunity, in access. It's just you see it from a distance, but you can't get it. And then you come to the US, it's different. It's like it presents opportunity. It's just you just have to act. You just have to do the work, and
Mm.
then doors will open. That's the difference that I think a lot of immigrants go through, and that's what I went through. So I can,
Do you think that's societally? Do you think long term? I wonder how that ebbs and flows because, like you were saying, the conditions that you came from required that someone have complete excellence or someone to help them out.
yes.
And depending on which way you made it, is that something that's a good thing to have in your society because it produces people who are hungry and will do their best no matter what? Or is it overall a net negative and a bad thing to go through? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think being from Kenya and looking at US from that perspective, there's always a US there. There's always a place
Mm-hmm.
that is awesome, that maybe there's more opportunities. You know what I mean? But in the US, there is no another place. It's just the US. So let's, for example, say there was Mars, which was incredibly advanced. We would like have our kids go there. We're like, listen, let's work hard and take you to Mars, and you know,
You'll
there's a
have a
drive there.
better
And then when your
life.
kid, yeah, it's a better life. And then when your kid gets there, the kid remembers, wow, my folks work so hard. I really need to push it. I really need
Mm,
to do
mm.
something. I don't want to be sent back to the US with nothing. At least when I go back, I want to go
Right.
back with something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but when you're here, it's like you're here. There's no any other thing to strive for except just being successful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a weird thing. Do you have kids of your own?
I do. I do.
How do you feel about them being raised in a society where you see so much, um, it's a weird thing to say, but like so much ease?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's something I'm talking about it right now with them. I have to kind of constantly remind them of, okay,
There's a real world out there.
there's
This
a
is
real world.
fake.
Yeah, it's not fake. It's
Right.
what the
But you
other
know what I
parts of
mean?
yeah, I get it. The other parts of the world are aspiring to get here, to get to
Mm,
this level. But
hmm.
I have to remind them, you have to remember, because I live in El Segundo. And these are one of the safest cities in California. So I tell him, listen, you absolutely have no excuse not to achieve what you need to do. You know, we typically watch documentaries on the world,
Yep.
and also there's a documentary on YouTube, the most dangerous trips to school, and it shows kids from all over the world traveling to school.
Oh, where can I see that?
And it's just on
Is it?
YouTube.
It's
Just go,
YouTube. It's YouTube.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And then
Okay.
you see kids actually like rowing their boats, and then there's one kid. They're like, the boat's not working, but they do whatever it takes to get to school. So the young
Wow.
one keeps removing the water out of the boat as the older one keeps rowing the boat to school. You know,
Right.
and they're going through
Cooperation.
cooperation, going through crocodiles and stuff like that. And I tell them, listen, you guys, all you have to
Wow.
do is to maximize who you're supposed to be, who you can become, because you
Right.
have all the tools. So
Hmm.
even if maybe they don't want to do something great or they don't want to perform, I think the best thing I'm doing, I believe it's correct. I want them to know that they had all the tools to get what they need, where they need to go, you know?
Hmm.
But I also have to remind them, like I said, the documentaries and the shows. Also took them to Kenya, and I want them to know that the future is not going to be just the US. I want you to know that you're competing with a kid
Hmm.
from India. You're competing with someone from China. You're
And
competing,
they're far hungrier.
and they're far hungrier because they want
They're
to get to
hungry.
the US, right?
Yeah.
And this is why when a foreigner comes here, they're so driven. You don't need like, you don't need like Tony Robbins to tell you,
Right.
hey, let's go. You just see it. You
Yeah.
just see
Yeah.
someone get up in the morning, and you just see someone drive or whatever. Just being here is enough ammo to just get going, you know?
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I was in El Salvador a few years ago, and I was talking to a guy who lived through the civil war that they had there back in the late 80s, early 90s. And he said on the way to school, the two opposing sides would cease fire, let the school bus go through, and then start the war again.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
And
Um,
education is really like a big deal. People take it so seriously outside US. It
mhm.
is a big deal. It is no joke.
Outside the U.S., they
Yeah. In the US, you can actually make it without this is the benefit. These are the advantages of
it's so
America.
true.
You can make
Right.
it without necessarily going to like college. See,
Oh,
all these executives can be like, I drop out of college. Yeah, of course, you can do it. But if you go to other countries, they want to see your credentials. They
yeah,
want to see
yeah.
evidence. Okay,
Mm,
you're smart, you talk nice, you're great, but show me the papers, man.
right,
You know,
right.
sometimes even companies might call the school. Did this guy go to this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're so serious. But then that's the advantage of a first world country.
Hmm.
There's a lot of avenues to
Right.
success. It doesn't have to be just one way. But in those other
Mm.
countries, like Kenya, for example, by 13, you already figured out what you need to do for a living.
And you better execute on that,
You
or
better,
you're going to
and you
be
can,
scraping food out of the dirt. I
you're
mean,
going to be scraping food. And then you have to kind of stick with it and be very sure that that's what you want to do. But
mm,
a first world like America,
wow.
you can you can actually decide halfway and say, you know, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
go do nursing. And you do nursing for a couple
Wow.
of years and like, you know, I want to do carpentry. And then you do that. That's the benefit of America. Do you know what I mean? But in those
Wow.
countries, when you do one profession, you got to stick with it because there's no luxury to go back and
Yeah.
try something else. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough.
And like next country over, I was in Nicaragua, and we were walking through this one town, and there's, you know how they have like the 20-foot and 40-foot shipping containers.
Yeah,
This was a 10-foot shipping container. It was like a little cube. And this guy in a wheelchair rolls up to it, opens it up, and it's full of shoes to the side. Like they kind of just go up to the side, backs himself in, and he starts working repairing shoes for the day on the side of the road. People come by, leave their shoes, he repairs them. And this guy, you know, if he was in the US, he might just be collecting unemployment and feeling like he didn't have a purpose and
yeah,
be depressed. This guy was with a friend. They were smiling and laughing and working. I walked by and was like, talked to him for a little bit, asked if I could
yeah.
take his portrait. And it was really interesting. And I looked at this like, you know, here's a guy who doesn't have the use of his legs, but still knows that I'm of value. And if I don't work, I won't eat. And
100%.
there's a harshness to that,
Yeah,
but in responding to I can be more than my difficulties, there's a pride in that, and there's a self-reliance in that that we lose track of really fast in this country. And it's nice that we have that luxury, but you kind of have to understand that it's a luxury and how to relate to it. It's a difficult thing.
yeah, yeah. You know, there's a quote I read. Uh, Man, it says, um, "Hard times create strong
Uh,
men. Strong men, men and women. It doesn't have to
yep,
be men and women.
yep,
Strong men create and good times create hard times, and hard times create strong. You know that whole thing.
yeah, yeah. So
It's a
it's
real thing.
hard times make hard men make soft times make soft
Men
men make hard
and
times.
soft men create hard times.
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
were giving I don't know
It's a
if it's
cycle.
Joe Rogan talked about this. He said
Yeah, yeah.
we're in the hard times. We're paying the price of the guys who just had a good time. You
Mm,
know, because if you look back during, you know, even the Wright brothers when they were making the airplane, and you know they had zero budget, but people were like, "This is awesome." You know, let's just can I partner with you guys? Just, you know, don't pay me anything. I just want to help. You know,
right.
there was kind of America was there back in the, you know, in the early days. It was
Mm,
hungry, but people are enjoying the fruits of the previous generation. So
right.
what's going to happen, like he's saying, it's going to get hard. And but the beautiful
Toughen
thing
up.
about the US, it has stories of
Mm,
a lot of heroes, a lot of guys who did amazing things. And you don't have to like go far, and you can just find somebody who did something extraordinary, and that will
mm.
just pump you up. Yeah. They have a lot of that in the
Ah,
US. Yeah. Now,
okay.
other
That's
than other
a
countries, you have a very few select, but the US has a ton of people who did a lot of incredible things. And that
yeah.
kind of, I think, drives the story, you know?
Yeah, it's the whole land of opportunity. Like we actually had the opportunity, and people who would show up and do the work could rise. And it wasn't the limiting of,
Yeah.
you're not of our class, you're not of our family, you won't be given that hand up. It leveled the playing field all the way back when. And for the most part, obviously, they thought they leveled the playing field. And Dave Chappelle has a great bit about that. Like they're leveling the playing field, and then they're like, go make my sandwich, you know? It's
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
but
crazy. It's amazing.
How did your kids take going back to Kenya? What did they see and take away from that?
Well, I think one of the things I really wanted them to see is number one, America is not the only place you can visit.
Hmm. And your
And
kids were
also,
born in the U.S. and have grown up here, I
they're
imagine.
born in the
Okay.
US, yes. But also I want them to know that, traveling is also a form of education.
Mm,
And if you travel, you can get really, really exposed to how the world really works. Um, but I also wanted them to see my family, my tribe,
hmm.
my people, and where I came from,
Yeah.
and how life was, how the
Mm,
roads are not perfect, how you have to actually do the work to make
yeah.
things happen. If you sit around, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to
Mm,
stay the same, you know? We had to walk a couple miles in a rural area, and, there were Sing people harvesting sugarcane. But I was telling them right now, if my dad did not go to university, I'm 100% sure I'd be harvesting sugarcane today with
hmm.
these guys. No
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
see my dad's friends whose parents didn't make a decision. Their
Mm,
kids are still there
mm.
doing that hard labor. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's very
Right.
interesting. And I'm looking at them, and we're kind of the same age,
Yeah.
with the same kind of, but someone made a decision and shifted his entire generation.
Mm,
And that's what I try to kind of let the kids know, that one
here.
decision can shift an entire
Yeah.
generation.
Here's a question you might not be able to answer because it's kind of a you don't ask a fish about water situation. But um, how does it feel to have not only a family, but you have a tribe that you can identify with, and you have a land that you can identify with, that you can have your history traced to, and go there and see your land, family, tribe history? Like, for generations in the US, we're part of this different thing that is the US. It's this land of opportunity, and it's a land that is just kind of it's one big mist of a tribe that's called America, but there's no real distinction. But
Yeah.
you can go back and see here are my roots. I can't go back to, like, I don't know, like Ireland or Norway or wherever my ancestors came from, and be like,
Yeah.
look at that. That's me in a sense. And I
Yeah.
connect, and here's my grandfather removed, or, that's gotta, I don't know. How does that feel? Is that an anchor in some way, or is it more of a something that you had to get out of because of the situation of a lack of opportunity? And so, what's the relationship like there? Can you talk on that at all?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. Um, yeah. The U.S. is, when I walked in, there's absolutely no tribe. It's
Mm,
it's very almost like you're left to your devices. You
ooh,
can you can want to be successful, or you can not want to be successful. And
mhm,
it's okay. You can want to just relax, and it's very interesting. But um, in Kenya, it's good to relate to a tribe, but it was almost like, it's like, it's just a feeling like, okay, the idea of belonging is not an issue, because this is where I'm from.
mhm,
uh, I mean, you don't really think about it if you haven't. I give people an example. Like, if you're a citizen of America, there's nothing to think about citizenship. I mean,
mm,
why? You're probably going to be thinking about, how do I get the next project? You know,
mhm.
how do I, move a new house or something? But an immigrant, they have to think about the laws and the process and how it's done, and the cost and whatever. So it's almost like, once I was there as my tribe, the idea of, not knowing where I'm from, you don't really need to think about it, because you already know. So now you have to venture in things that you don't know. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Oh,
that part
that's
of,
interesting. Yeah, you
yeah,
kind of flipped into, oh, now I have to learn this system of this land of opportunity, but I know
yes,
where I'm from and who I
yeah.
am.
So
We're
that
born into
struck,
a system of opportunity, and we kind of have
yes,
to figure out where we're from and who we are.
yeah. So that part of
Oh,
unknown is almost like the
interesting.
brain now is satisfied. Now you just lock it away, it's done. Uh, it's almost like if you're looking for, you want to figure out where you do a DNA test that says, hey, you're from, Ireland. And
Yeah,
then, and it spots exact location right there. And you're like,
right.
your mind, your mind wants to know. So pack your bags and go and figure out and find someone who looks like you. You're like, hey, what's up?
That might be
You
related.
know, but there's no land for you, but this is it,
Right.
but once you do that, then that part of the mind is sorted. Now you can now move on to something else. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, no.
emotionally okay,
Right.
so I know I'm from that tribe. I get it. And I keep telling my kids, you guys are, from Africa, you're this tribe. But then again, the way the world is going, it's kind of like we're all kind of together. The only difference is it's how you've figured out who you are, how you've
Mm,
maximized your opportunities to master a craft or something. You know what I mean? It's
right.
like, have you
Yeah.
utilized whatever you have to get your mind at peace, like finding your tribe, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, if you don't mind me asking the question, feel free to pass. And I might be ignorant in asking it or insensitive. I'm not sure, but I'll go ahead and potentially offend you. Sorry. Um, in being the most probably African and American, I imagine you have your citizenship by this time, and your kids are very much African American. But
Yeah.
there's still very much a different cultural history for someone who's considered to be African American in the sense that we are in America.
Yeah.
And is there a distinction that you have to walk your kids through in that at all?
Yeah. We talk a lot about history,
Mm,
but we talk about history of humans,
mm,
and how we typically are. So,
mm,
you know,
mm.
where's
Yeah.
violence from? You know what I mean? Why because we work a lot on social, emotional stuff,
Mm-hmm.
emotional regulation.
Mm,
Recognize how you feel and what's really important. There was a time my daughter was late because of, she wanted to put nail stuff. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, so was it worth it? Was the nails that important?
mm.
And to fulfill you, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's almost like we do talk about a lot of these historical events, especially the African American experience. And
Mm-hmm.
I personally go much deeper because when I came to the US and I landed Ohio, I immediately felt a thing. Do you know what I mean? No one needed to
Mm,
tell me that there was a differentiation between white people and black people. I just
mm-hmm.
felt something. And I
Mm,
was like, what is this thing that I'm
mm,
feeling? You know what I mean? And you just feel it's like out of place, not as a black person. It's a feeling. I couldn't define it. So I was
mm,
like, this is nuts. I need to figure this out. So I started reading books from the 1800s and stuff. I was like, why don't I go to the beginning and see what happened? So I went all the way to France, and I found, those General Alexander Dumas, who was a black general. And at that time, there were blacks for free in France. And he was
mm,
commanding a force of 50,000 people all the way to Italy and Egypt or whatever.
mm,
But it was interesting seeing all this stuff. But as history and economy came in,
mm.
economy meaning money, it changed things quite a bit because people wanted to be comfortable. So how do we get comfortable and let others not be comfortable?
And we
Then
take advantage of other people to make us comfortable.
yeah, exactly. To make it easy and
Yeah.
to relax, to
Your
drink that
life's
tea.
harder, mine will be easier, so I'll control you and make my life easier. Seems
Yeah.
fairly human.
But you're both a burden to each other. So one person is a burden and the other person is a burden to the other. So it's like
Mm,
a very stressful, agreed kind of social construct,
hmm.
which is very problematic, which
Yeah.
historically we know was really bad. But we talk about all this stuff, and I try to educate them carefully and slowly. You don't just
Mm,
bombard the whole thing, but we go way back when we start this stuff. So when you arrive at the 60s and then arrive today, your understanding is more in a calm way and also a regulated way. When a situation occurs, you look
mm,
at it from a historical perspective. I mean, I see what's going on and I see
hmm.
why he's doing this or he or she's doing this, and you can react in a
Mm,
much more stoic way so that
mm.
it doesn't internally mess you up, because it
Right.
can, because some of these things are, even till today, some of these things are heavy burdens. Like,
Yeah.
it is intense because humans want to belong. And
Mm,
if you don't belong, then it causes a kind of, it's almost like a health problem, that, we don't know what to define what it is because it's a thing that's
mm,
affecting, you know, and it affects foreigners, affect the locals here. But it's a very heavy feeling. The only way to,
mm,
I figured out the only way to overcome is by understanding the history on a
mm,
deeper level.
mm,
Then you'll be free. That's why, um, Frederick Douglass says you can't enslave an educated man. It's
mm,
impossible. You can't do that because the guy gets it. So you
mm,
can't use your manipulative ways to
mm, mm,
get this person captivated or this person like mentally, constrained, because he gets it. He
mm.
knows the game. He knows the psychological energy
Right.
behind it, and he can divert from that stuff.
That's a really interesting quote, but I would disagree with it a tiny bit. But I would say it depends on how the person has been educated. Like if their education has been one of being controlled and manipulated their entire
Yeah,
life,
yeah,
like the movie 12 Years a Slave, when he runs
yes,
into, he's
yeah,
like, all right, we got a chance, and what we're gonna do, and they're like, we're beaten. Nope.
yeah,
And he's just like, are you kidding? What? And it's like that light went off. It's like, yeah, like exactly that
yeah.
quote. But it
But
the further critique I would have is be very careful of what you let educate you.
that's
And
right. The
that's
education
where a father
system,
comes
yeah,
in my opinion. And
that's right. The education system in the U.S. does not accommodate healing. It doesn't help
mm.
with the citizens understand. That's the problem.
Do you homeschool your kids?
I did homeschool my kids for a couple years, but my son is in homeschool. My daughter just started fourth grade public school,
Hmm.
but we and my young one is in kindergarten. But the daily interactions in the house,
Mm,
maybe when we go to sleep, we read a story,
mm,
has messages that convey a little bit of history, and
yeah.
then that will guide them, which I know they're not getting in school. Then no one's gonna actually. If you can live your entire life not really knowing anything like this stuff,
Oh yeah.
because the school doesn't accommodate that. The textbooks in the library don't have that, and the books that have this information are not cheap, very
Mm,
expensive. Yeah,
mm. Well, you seem like you're a very intentional father, and yeah, very intentional and clear, and have thought through a lot of this that you're transferring to your kids. And I think a lot of people could take a lesson from that, because I think we get caught up in societal trends and just like, oh, they go to school, they learn all that, it'll be okay. And obviously that's questionable. So
yeah,
thank you for sharing all of that. That has walked me through understanding and emotions that I haven't been able to experience myself, that broaden my perspective. So thank you. Now, the less interesting part to me personally
yeah.
is the more technical stuff. But so you've come from that situation and come across the pond to to start a company and to make something of yourself in a land of opportunity. Where did you land, and how did you get from where you landed to where you are today?
Uh, like physically, I landed in Ohio. Portsmouth is where I started. And it's a great idea for a foreigner to start in a small town because it's number one, small,
Hmm.
and people have time to talk. And, you go to the liquor store, there's time for lengthy conversations, you know,
Mm.
as opposed to a big city, there's no time. Get your stuff and exit.
Right.
So it was great. So now they can tell me a little bit about the town. They're curious about who I am. I'm curious about who they are. It was a great introduction to the
How did
U.S.
you
for
find the people in that area?
really nice,
Yeah.
really nice, really kind. You know what I mean? I was fortunate to meet just nice people. And even till
Mm.
today, I'm just lucky. I don't know. I haven't met any bad person. Everybody is just awesome. You know what I mean? Or
I think
maybe I just,
95% of people are good people.
yeah, they're just good people. People just want to do the right thing and get what they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody, they just want to make life awesome. That's it. Um, but it was a great introduction to the U.S. The slow rhythm, the slow pace, um, was fantastic. I mean, from there, moved to Colorado, and then went to college there a little bit, and then moved to California.
Mm.
Um, but California is where like really pushed me
Mm.
because people don't have time. People are busy.
Mm.
People don't have I was used to saying hello to everybody. That was how I understood it. But when I come
So
to LA, I'm
you
saying
came to
hello.
California like a country bumpkin, what we would
Yeah,
call country bumpkin. Like, hey, everybody, how you doing? What's
I
going
was saying
well?
hi, and I said hello to this lady, and I felt like I was saying hello to a wall. It
Right.
was just, and I was expecting a response.
Right.
Hello? No, nothing. Okay, and this became really normal. Like people just don't
Yeah.
say hello at people I met at that time, and I figured it's either me or this is the culture. But
Yeah.
I was obsessed with self improvement. So I started just kind of like, I mean, this is America. Somebody has figured this out. Somebody must have figured this stuff out. So I went online and was like, how to talk to people, how to all that stuff, how to talk to people in California. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just being specific.
Please tell me you found on YouTube a Kenyan's guide to learning how to communicate with Southern Californians.
Nothing.
That'd
There's
be great.
nothing. Yeah. But, from there, looked for a job, but couldn't get a job. But I found a job in the Valley, San Fernando Valley. I sent Craigslist. I used Craigslist to look for work.
Hmm.
I sent every hour, I was sending like 20 to 30 emails. I went to Yellow Book. I got the Yellow Book and I was just sending, sending, sending. I was like, I didn't even care, whatever. I was just sending. I sent like 1,000, like a lot of all the companies like, somebody got to say something,
Right.
you know? But one person called me and he's like, hey, I want you to come here and try an exam. We're going to test your skills. And that's America for you. They didn't ask for my credentials. They just
Hmm.
wanted me to do an exam.
Right.
And I
Right.
was
That's
like,
interesting.
this is awesome. But in Kenya or other parts of the world, before you walk into that building, they want to see your high school credential. They want to see your teacher recommendations from high school. They want to see your diploma, all that stuff. And then they're
Right.
like, okay, you're good. You're educated. Let's go. But this guy's didn't care. They're like, can you do this? I was like, yeah, I did the work, did it in like a minute. They're like, you're hired. Come on Monday. I was like, this is great. This is fantastic. Got the job. And I was like, I just said, I'm going to work so hard, man. I'm going to make your company awesome. So that
They
was my
must have just
motivation.
been like, what's wrong with this guy? Like,
I was in the culture. I was deep. I was like, I probably would be your God myself, the best employee because I was so driven for the
yeah.
success, not for the CEO, but for the company. Do you know what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Yeah.
I want this company to grow. So I was like, I want to do my part plus 100.
Right.
So I used to work super hard and, I did whatever I could. But unfortunately, things didn't work out. The boss wasn't, I think I was doing a lot of self improvement. That's what I was thinking. So I got into this body language thing and how to walk, how to stand, because I used to walk sloppy and whatever.
Right.
So I changed my posture, and someone told me, dude, you're kind of intimidating, you know? And
You overdid it.
yeah, I overdid it. And I know deep down in my heart, I feel like that's what made me lose my job. I think that messed my job. And, you know, I lost a job, went to my little room that I was staying and did the same thing, started sending a bunch of emails. And then the company that changed my life was in Santa Monica. Got this architect, really cool guy. He was very relaxed. And that's when I saw different cities can give you different vibes and different forms of success. If you go to a city, the valley was I was very settled. I wasn't that motivated to like grow. I was motivated just to work hard and just stay there. When I went to Santa Monica and I'm watching the people, I was like, people are kind of driven for something bigger. You can see people walking. That's what I saw. People walking for bigger things. Everybody was aspiring to do something big, but yet relaxed. So I was like, this is interesting. So I started working for this guy. And, the drive to freelance, just started kicking in while really pushing to work in this company and just being excellent. And I think I started freelancing. But my boss figured out you're freelancing and he said, you do freelancing again, you're going to get fired. So I got scared. But then, of course, when I met my wife, she said, Phil, you can definitely do this stuff yourself. Because I was pretty much doing 80% of the work in the company and getting like, I don't know, 10% profit.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I was getting nothing. So first year, I just started doing renderings for companies because I saw something interesting with what I was doing. We were designing, but the clients were so happy to see their home in the computer. They're like, oh, this is so beautiful. This is way back. And the rendering quality was horrible. But then again, just seeing it, was enough. You don't need to, it doesn't have to be extremely like super realistic, like, avatar. You just want to see shape of your house and you can move around and stuff like that. They got so excited. They were so, inspired by their project because they're like, we both get it. We all understand how this looks like. So I was like, this is probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to do renderings. So I did that for a couple of years and just kept at it, got a company. And I started, instead of sending email to local people like Santa Monica only, I figured I could just send the whole entire America. How about I send everybody in the US, all the companies in America? So I started Austin. I was like the most busiest cities in construction. At that time was Arizona.
Austin's big right now.
Austin was big. There was New Mexico. There was New York. There was all that stuff. So I was sending emails. I was busy just sending emails. And then I got one company, Deltec. Oh no, I got Deltec and I got PSW. They're called Storybuild right now. And that company actually now launched my business. Yeah.
And so when in what you're doing, I imagine you're generating these 3D models from floor plans in essentially like ArchiCAD and Revit type models, now turning them into spaces that you can basically traverse like you would a video game, I imagine, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's a game software.
Wow.
The same video game for Fortnite and all those video games kids love to play. That's what we're using for architecture. Fortnite is actually, the look is very, bright colors, almost cartoony. That's a style, but you can get very realistic. Like Disney is actually using Unreal for some of their scenes.
Hmm.
So if
Oh,
you can
wow.
achieve that cinematic look for architecture and actually just walk in, then that's a game changer.
Mm.
And I remember before I transitioned to this software, the traditional way of rendering was you create the scene, set up the camera, set up the lighting and all that stuff, press render and wait like 8 hours. You wait 8 hours and hope that
It doesn't
everything you
trip.
put, it doesn't trip and everything was correct.
Mm.
Sometimes you can do an 8 hour rendering and discover there's a floating chair. So you're like, oh, I got to do it again. So
Right.
that's such a time wasting thing. And it's expensive because the client wants something done. So you're always late.
Right.
So I saw this documentary I saw this video on YouTube of Titanic on a video game. And I was like, this is incredibly realistic. I can't believe it. The textures and whatever. You're just like geeking on this thing. It's like, this is so good. What program is this? So I found the program and immediately, this is a challenge that usually happens with VR, is once you see the software, it is the um, the interface is so intimidating
Mm.
because there's just commands and buttons, and it just looks like it's so much work. I can't do this. The learning curve is just in it's just tough. So I was like, okay, this is the future. I have to do something.
Mm.
So the best thing what I did is I told a client, I found a client and I said, I can do this in Unreal Engine. And I didn't know anything about the program. So I got the job, signed the contract. They gave me half. So I had to deliver this project in Unreal Engine, and I didn't know anything about it. So it's almost like I went to a cave and disappeared, and I said I have to figure this thing out.
Yep.
So while I'm
That's how
doing
you get
stuff and
stuff done, man. That's interesting. I have a good friend who says a renovation is never fully underway until you have a toilet in the front yard.
yes, that's correct.
It's like you
Um,
just gotta like just rip this stuff out. All right,
just
now we have
yeah,
to do it.
now
So,
you have to do it. So I reached out to people from like Korea. There were some really good guys, Korea, Germany, France, really good artists, sending emails, asking them, actually begging them to show me how they did something. And,
mm,
artists, that's top secret. That's your thing. You don't want
right,
to share your skills to somebody. I mean, that's
right.
your skills is what's making you bread and money. So I was like, no one shared anything. So I saw one of my favorite artists did a fast. Those YouTube videos where it shows a sketch and then it becomes a drawing. It just goes fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I took one of those videos and slowed it completely down so I could
Ooh,
see what they're
that's my
clicking on.
move.
Saying that, so you click on this and then the lights become awesome. I was like, okay. So I was like, no. So I did that
uh,
and I taught myself the program by just taking those videos that they put online and I
right.
slowed them down and I started watching their skills because they
See
can't
that
share.
that's the hunger. That's the ingenuity.
Yeah.
That's the I know that this is real and there's no safety net.
Yeah.
And I think if you're generationally from the US, there's an apathy or a laziness that comes as like, yeah, I'll be all right. And there's not that drive and that like, we can do this. I can figure it
Yeah.
out. How are you going to do
Yeah.
it? Just jump in,
Yes,
do
that's
it.
it.
And it's like when I moved, I live in Maine. When I moved here, there was a lot of people in the specific town I moved to, Biddeford. When I moved here, there's a demographic that just kind of, the saying was, the town's name is Biddeford, and they would say, Biddeford's always been Biddeford, it will always be Biddeford. It was a down and out town, right? And now it is not. It is in high RPMs of being gentrified, and
Wow.
prices have gone through the roof. It's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. But the people that were moving here in the time when I moved here, were seeing this as a down and out. It's a weird thing. It was a down and out land of opportunity. And the opportunity was that you could create here. You could purchase something at low cost and turn it into something of high value through your own effort and ingenuity. So,
Yeah.
there were quite a few projects that ended up with a toilet on the front lawn in renovation and all that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man. It's almost like, and once you do something like that, then there's no program you can't learn. It's almost like you've just told your brain, you can do it.
Right.
So the idea, so now you can see the idea of no. And at that time, also I was inspiring myself by, I was listening to PBS a lot. I was listening to Ken Barnes documentaries.
Mm.
And if you listen to Ken Barnes, it's just poetry,
Mm.
when you listen to that stuff.
His
And
his quote of it's the artist's responsibility to lead the viewer into hell, and it's also the artist's responsibility to lead them out of hell.
Yes.
And I'm currently 10 years into sitting on a documentary that I started 10 years ago. That when I started it, I basically formed the going into hell,
Yes.
but have spent 10 years trying to figure out how to understand the storyline or even the philosophy of how to get out of the situation where I went to, and just my belief and thinking that when I heard that quote from Ken Burns gave me that like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
But, sorry, listening to Ken Burns and
his stuff was so good because I was sitting there listening to like I was listening to his documentaries on just simple things like Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin, or even Lewis and Clark. Even though it's controversial now, I was just listening to American stories of, or Muhammad Ali. Just listening to their stories, and because he doesn't go like, well, did a fight and he won and went home. No, they start when they were kids, like when they were tiny little toddlers, and how they slowly became who they are. So I was listening to that stuff, and I was like, oh man, it's so compelling, and that's why I think America is interesting, because the stories, even if you're like not motivated or anything, it's everywhere. You know what I mean? The motivation, you're stepping on it. It's so hard not to be driven, because the people who came before us have given so many interesting stories, have overcome so much stuff, and now I have a habit of, when I'm doing my work, a project, I'm always listening to an audio of a story of a book. Now I'm kind of into listening to lectures mostly, from great courses. And great course is interesting because it's like you might as well just listen to those things, or you can go to an Ivy League university. But these are the top lecturers of the United States a company decided to bring them and tell them, make a course for us, your best. Right. And they do deliver. It's interesting. So that, while I'm sitting alone, figuring out this software, I'm also being inspired by the people, people who lived in it, people who achieved a lot of stuff in the U.S. And that gives me just give me ammo. It's almost like a second chance. Like I lived their life after listening to the entire bio. It's like I've lived his life, but I also have a second chance. Like, what can I do to become better?
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's kind of the beauty of a story, is that you live through their experience, and then you get to take away from that and avoid the things that they didn't avoid. It's like you get that second chance. That's an interesting way of looking at that. So when you're working, you're essentially taking plans and designs from architects and turning them into these virtual reality models that then they can share with their clients. Do the architects share them with their clients through VR goggles, or is it typically through a computer or screen, or how's that typically work?
Yeah, I think initially that was the plan, VR goggles, but they tended to make people dizzy. Um, and they have a stabilizing um, mechanism for the VR goggles, but still, it was on the face, and people sometimes are sensitive with their face. They don't want anybody touching them. You have to put them on your face. Um, so we noticed it was just kind of a tough approach, and then it's an expensive thing because setup is very costly, and nobody can afford those things even till today. They're still expensive. So what we do is just a conference call, like a Zoom call, and and we can have 7 people have a conversation about a project. We can have the structural engineer, the mechanical, the electrician. We can have all those people sit together and design a building within 30 minutes, achieve a lot of progress in 30 minutes that would have taken weeks in communication, weeks in here. Hey, what about this? What about that? Someone lighting will be like, okay, that lighting is right under my stuff. Someone might say, maybe it's under the beam. The beam is blocking something or whatever. So it's almost like we can all see the building come to life together. And when the construction documents are prepared, everybody is on point. Everybody knows where everything is going. This miscommunication is completely diminished. It's reached a point
between the contributors.
It's so much clearer. It's
Yeah.
less haggling, less he did this, he did less pointing fingers. Everybody's in the same page. That means the project just moves much faster. We got hired by the one group to do renderings, and now we pretty much do renderings for all their restaurants. They're doing remodels and also Fogo de Chao, all their restaurants. And right before any project is submitted and approved, they have an opportunity to actually see it and make adjustments in real time. We can change material in real time. You can find a material on Google and send it to me right there in the conversation.
That's cool.
And we can see it on the floor and make a decision. We can play with the lighting type and temperature and experience.
Real time in an online meeting.
On an online meeting. Wow, and nice. Move certain lights, certain areas. And it's almost like we're now a design tool. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And we're helping everyone we're helping the owners of the company and the designer communicate effectively and identify things that don't need to be there, saving cost, saving material, saving all that stuff. And it's just a fantastic way of designing,
Now, in the process of what you do, where do you see AI jeopardizing your livelihood or improving your capabilities?
Yeah. So I told myself I'm on a schedule, because, if AI does this, it's all good. I did the best that I could. So I'll either go to AI and I'm an early adopter, so I'm already using AI now. Mm-hmm. And AI, what I'm using it for is when a client has no idea, gives me an imagination of something that they're thinking. So whatever description they give me is what we use as a prompt and say, is this what you're imagining? It's like, yeah.
Oh, you can generate prompts like,
yeah.
Okay, yes, no, yes. Okay.
With their imagination. So we work in reverse. So we take that and build that imagination on an actual program that has dimensions like ArchiCAD or Revit, and then expound further through construction documents. Right. So it still works. But I always tell, some of my friends, listen, even if it goes, because web design, I remember in the past when companies to celebrate a website. It's like a big party, cocktails, everybody, dress up. Friday's a party, let's go. And then you have the CEO parking here, and then the web designer is parking right next to him. It was a big deal. But now, web designer, anybody can do it.
Right.
Um, same thing with other type of design, any type of design. Graphic design has been affected, logo designs. You can actually do it. Softwares can now figure things out. AI is actually affecting those logo designs and stuff because it's doing a pretty good job. But out of even interior design now, thanks to HGTV and this TV shows, they're telling you can do yourself. You don't need to hire an expert, but you do need an expert when it comes to a big house or a restaurant or something. 100%. Also, for an elegant home,
Right.
you need an expert. But majority of people feel like they can do it themselves, so they're going to try. But when it comes to architecture, one of the guys was telling me when the building and safety now has a software that anybody can use. So the building and safety right now, most of them have plans, have your site plan, you have the measurements of how big your lot is. Maybe like Google, they have Google Map. You can see some of the buildings. They'll be more realistic, more specific. That means if you want to make changes, you don't necessarily have to hire somebody. You can go to the log into the building and safety site and say, hey, I want to move here and there. You pay a couple of fees because you made a few adjustments, and then you get a permit. You know what I mean? And then, it's like it's all connected. They have a system, a software that's connected to your property. So
Right. Right.
if you want to make changes, it will help you. And everything is code. If there's changes in code, it's not like you have to go read some document. It's automatically ingrained in the program, which
Wow.
mom and pop can use. Your grandfather can just log in and say, oh, I just want a new kitchen. Then he does a couple of things, gets a permit, hire a couple of guys, new kitchen.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's your emotional take on AI coming into, like, I think in the past it was always like we were worried about manufacturing jobs. And now it's so much more intellectual jobs or creative jobs that are on the chopping block. In our fear part of our brain, they're on the chopping
Yeah.
block. But what I
Yeah.
think it actually is going to be more like taking all technology with you, capabilities into the creative moment. So it's kind of like we're adding a turbo to the engine by utilizing AI. What's your take on that?
I mean, it has its pros and cons. Yeah. You know, I think for those who kind of ahead in tech will benefit, but for those who probably just don't know what it is, it might be like a shock,
Mm,
because, if it's just the future with good preparation could be okay for somebody.
mm,
And if you're not prepared, then you're going to be shocked. And I think that shock idea um, can affect you positively or negatively. But I'm like I said, I'm an adapter to tech, so I have some concerns with AI. I mean, I've read a bunch of books on AI, and the one of the scary things for me is it kind of is replacing. It's doing we For a long time we've been making things to do things for us. That's what we've done. How
right,
do I
right,
do something to instead of me typing? How can I just talk? I don't want to type. I don't want to
right,
write
right.
anymore. We
Completely.
just want
Yes.
to chill and just let things happen. Now AI is kind of like showing us that's a possibility. And there's a book by Carlos Domingos called The Master Algorithm, and he says we are getting to the point where we'll make the last man will invent the last machine, the last uh, machine ever,
Mm,
and that's the last time we'll ever invent anything, because this thing will now do pretty much everything faster, better. The quality of material will be way more sophisticated and way better for us. And those days coming closer. and it will be an utopia. I mean, we'll have a conversation like this. I could be talking to you, you could be AI, I could be AI. And then it's almost like, what's the purpose of us doing this?
Mm.
The purpose is almost like us now in the future really like finding what makes you happy. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Instead
Yeah.
of really looking for a job and finding money to eat, because there's already AI will help us find simpler solutions to doing that.
Yeah.
That's like the like like if everyone is nice on the planet and no one gets pissed and does something silly, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then we'll get there. But I'm optimistic about this, but also I'm concerned because for those who don't have the equipment or the skill to adapt to some of this technology, it's going to be really shocking
Mm.
and very. It's like a threat. It's going to be a big threat,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
know,
I
yeah,
had the thought the other day. I think I was mowing the lawn or something. But at some point, it's possible that there will be a last human, both conceived and born naturally. Like, it's
yes,
very conceivable that someday we move
yeah,
into a state of believing that, well, it's dangerous to
give
conceive
birth.
because of the translation of diseases. So we
That's right.
do it in a test tube and then we raise it there and then it's birthed. So, just like they don't let really highly prized racehorses actually mate. They artificially inseminate them, and because there's too much potential that the horse could kick the other horse or something, right? There's too much value. We could very easily get to the point where we so remove ourselves from the process of being and creating more that we become this isolated thing that is very dystopian when you think about it. But hopefully us thinking about and talking about now avoids a bad outcome.
I hope
And
so.
if that is a bad outcome, I hope we avoid it. So
I hope
yeah.
so. I there's a video on YouTube. If you Google um, uh, animal mirror in, it's just I think it's mirror in a jungle.
Oh, is
Uh,
this the one where the bear walks by and attacks it, and then they have one where a gorilla walks by and is
yes,
like, yeah, yeah.
I was telling my kids that is AI in the future. It's going to be so advanced that we humans won't
Mm,
even know what we're looking
right,
at.
right. We're gonna think it, and we're gonna.
We're going to
It's
react,
like,
but we don't know what it is. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Because we're still evolving as humans, but there's still more that
yeah,
that we don't know. And if AI can surpass us by like 10 years, oh my God. I mean,
yeah.
it can create a heaven and say, guys, you walk into that door, you're going to heaven.
Mm,
And language is the blueprint of our existence. If you have language, like Jesus, language was his key, Buddha or
mm-hmm.
Muhammad, they use words and
Yeah.
language. And
Mm-hmm.
if an AI can walk and tell you something with language,
Yep.
you'll be a follower.
Yeah.
Like you'll be like, wow, that was so powerful. Oh
Mm.
my gosh. It's like I have to go with this guy.
Yeah. Language is kind of like the building blocks of progress, and it's
Yeah.
why, if you imagine if all humans just agreed to stop talking for one generation, we would lose everything that we've built to this point, unless AI
Wow.
took it over and we just
Yeah.
became. But just one generation, don't talk,
Yeah.
and
My
we're
God.
done,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
So
Yeah.
then that makes you realize, why are we fighting over all these things? Mostly we're fighting over what the words mean. We're fighting over ideologies, religions, tribes,
Yes.
families of,
Yeah.
we have a family or a
Yeah.
tribe or a
Yeah.
nation or a
Yeah.
religion that we
Yeah.
value this, and
Yeah.
we articulate it and we use the words in this way and we do this, and then the words say this and mean that. So our behavior is this, and we believe the end result will be that. So that's what we do. We don't do that. Well, then we're going to fight. So I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. But at the same time, you get it so you understand why it's so valuable and you have to protect it. And
Yeah.
therein is the dance of overprotection and stagnation, or underprotection and progress to maybe disintegration. So that's why we're fighting over it all. It's really
It's
interesting.
incredible. And that's the fear of AI, because as we are typing ChatGPT and Twitter and whatever, as we are doing this, these things are built to learn.
Mm,
They're like babies now. And
mm.
once they're like, I really get these humans. You know what I mean? You're in the
They're
airport and
so easy to manipulate.
they're in
You
the
know what we
airport
could
and
do here?
if they want to move a colony of people from a city, you just use words
Yeah,
and they'll take off. They'll leave.
yeah,
In fact, it's like those guys who say God is coming on Friday.
yeah.
Sell all your stuff, sell everything, come to the mountains, let's watch the sunset,
Mm,
and close our eyes and wake up. We'll be in heaven.
right.
You know, you wake up, you sold your stuff, and the sun's still shining, the day's still going. It's like shock. You know what?
You're not Seventh-day Adventist, are you?
No, no, it's just stuff I've watched, I've seen,
Yeah, yeah,
just curiosity. But
yeah.
that's it. That's the thing with AI. It's just learning us. But
Mm.
capitalism is going to push it to the end. That's all. That's all I think.
That,
It's just going to push it to the end because
yeah,
your neighbor wants to make money. So they're going to do something even if they don't believe in it to get
man.
that Tesla, to get that Raptor truck, something, you know.
Right. And then, capitalism is this in my opinion, capitalism is like that necessary evil that best overlays the shortcomings of humanity to motivate them forward.
Yeah.
But even in that, you still have this, like, I believe we're finding ourselves now currently in a very, very, very top heavy capitalist structure. And I do think it's somewhat, hopefully we can see the writing on the wall and realize it's late stage capitalism and pull ourselves back from it.
It's
But
hard.
it's
Someone
hard.
like you sitting here gets it. But that's the problem with language. It's just like three or four or five people, they'll get it. But once you make
Hmm.
it bigger, then communication is disrupted.
Mm,
Um, and then it becomes an argument. And
mm,
then it becomes so uncomfortable that we just walk away. Be like,
yeah.
it is whatever, man. You know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, I'm actively avoiding the content I see on YouTube that is news around what is currently happening in, like, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, and Gaza, because I know what's going on, and to see it hurts so
yeah,
bad. And I don't
yeah,
know what I can really do from here,
it's
honestly.
difficult. It's
And
really difficult.
yeah, and I feel bad that I actively am like, I'm sorry, but I can't do this right now. I know you guys are suffering and your children are dead. You're holding your dead child there. And, well, okay, I will vote and I will spend according to not, yeah, but what do you do? It's so hard. And I don't think we're made, I don't think we evolved to know these kinds of things. We
Yes.
evolved to have an influence that is more real, to
Yeah.
know what's going on the other side of the globe like that, and to be able to
Mhm.
hyper focus on the very bad that's current happening, and think that that's everything, or at least the attention of the world on that. That's a hard one. I don't know how to cope with that. I don't know how to deal with it. And I don't know what's right to do in that situation, what's
Yeah.
morally
What
correct, honestly.
that's a profound question. What is right? I before we wrap, I don't even know wrapping, but I wanted to let you know this book called Life 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, he talks about being human in an age of artificial intelligence.
Mm,
So his
I
name is
like that.
Max Tegmark.
Oh, that
Uh,
guy. Yeah,
yeah.
he's good. He's good.
So he gives a scenario. I think this is him. He gives a scenario because we're so still not united. Like just the idea of a nuclear weapon. One nation has it, it's a problem. I have to have it because you have it.
Mm,
Same thing with AI. China
right,
has to have
right.
AI, US has to have it, Russia has to have it. So they're all building something. And in this whole story comes to a point where both AIs start talking to each other without us
Mm.
knowing.
Oh yeah.
And they figure out that these organisms
They're really
are
dangerous. What do we do with them?
they're
Which
really
they'd be right.
dangerous, right? Um, and AI only works if we're all united. That's what I. If we're all united, it will work successfully.
Right.
But humans
You know,
typically,
that's really interesting. Like, we think of AI as being potentially very dangerous. But if we're
yeah,
honest and the AI start to talk, they're going to
yeah,
say these humans are really dangerous.
yeah,
And not
yeah,
as a threat to them, but just from a relative perspective, looking at us. It's like these things that have barely evolved beyond chimpanzees have nuclear weapons. This is not good.
yes.
That's we
So
can do better.
he says that is a big problem because if they start talking, then they'll start and they get so advanced and they look at the history of us, the way we've
Mm,
polluted the planet or something. If we move to like Arizona, land that's bare, fresh, there's nothing happening, and humans come in, we'll start destroying it.
mm,
We'll you know, put trash everywhere. We're just not gonna make it nice. It's gonna be like all these homes and stuff. It's just gonna
um,
the rich nature will be gone, right?
mm,
And that's what happens to like a virus in your skin. You want to get rid of it. It's
right.
a problem. You get medicine. It's like, oh my gosh, it's right there. How do I get rid of that thing? That's
It's
making
happening.
the skin not fantastic. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he
How do you
talks
be
about
that?
that.
How do we be that virus that's improves the situation and
Yes,
betters things? So
that's it.
something for
That's
humanity to focus on.
that's the fear. So, anyways, but that's the kind of long term. I personally, as a designer, I'm looking at it. I'm just going to maximize my opportunity as I'm living. But I know in like maybe 10 years, I have a feeling that I might be doing something different.
Mm,
You know, like just like architecture, I started doing CAD. I was doing the CAD work and stuff, but I had to force myself to go to VR, even
mm,
though it was unpopular, even though people didn't like it. I
mm,
just had to do it because I had a feeling like this is a really good way of understanding a project.
mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I know since even till today, people still don't want to get into it because it's such a burden learning this stuff.
Hmm.
So even AI actually has kind of affected VR because the idea of just saying a prompt and it's there. It's like, oh, that's awesome, man. I don't even have to do anything, you know,
Right. Right.
the easy way out, right?
Yeah. I wonder if, and I'll try and wrap this up as a final thought, maybe that in using AI as such a heavy lift in these prompt proposals, almost right. I wonder if, like, the benefit that we've had as humanity having to work together and work through generating and executing on creative ideas to just get them to the chopping block to then chop off all the spare, right? Something in that process. There's no gain in technology without some significant tax on humanity. What is the tax that we're going to pay in having this advancement in AI that can do so much more in the creative process for us that we don't have as much of that heavy lift? Like, we can be profitable in the short term, and that's great for you sitting in that chair, me sitting in this chair now. But when our kids sit in that chair, how much less capable are they going to be because they don't have to do that work? But how much do they fill their free time with things that improve them in place of that potentially? Maybe that's a solution.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we all know that with a bunch of free time, it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that that free time is beneficial either. So, yeah,
I
there's
think,
that.
yeah, that's a great statement. I think, and I was just thinking how AI will affect us. So I've been doing prompts for a long time. There's a big difference. Humans, I think, you see, it's like movies in the past. If you look at I used to watch Best of the Best, Rambo. I know for those who remember those things,
Yeah.
Rambo or Van Damme or whatever, all those guys, Bruce Lee. When you see those movies, they started with a process. He's like he gets beat up, and then he's like he goes to the gym, he works out, trains for a long time, he gets hurt, gets up and does it again, right? And excuse me, and it shows steps, and then finally meets his match and wins the fight, right? But on the movie, you could see that he really worked. That there was a stage,
Right,
Um,
right.
but the movies for today, it's like you're just a hero. You just become. You don't
Hmm.
need to. There's no work. You're just there. You know,
Oh, yeah,
right?
that's kind of true. The superhero genre is
It's just
far
there.
more like an immediate change getting bit
It's
by
an
a
immediate.
radioactive spider. And you're kind of,
Yeah,
oh, I never noticed that difference of a plot approach. That,
yeah,
yeah, all the 80s movies were overcoming difficulty to
yeah,
make something of yourself. And
yeah.
more so now, the superhero movies are just all of a sudden, or you're just existing as this completely different thing.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never noticed
They
that.
they focus on the process of becoming. If the whole movie
Hmm.
was more of the process, and then the success.
Right,
With AI, the process is not there.
right.
So I think what's going to happen is creativity might go down
Hmm.
because you've missed the process. Because when you're doing something, like you work in a garage making a chair from
Mm.
scratch, while
Yeah.
you've drafted something on paper, that chair might look different in the end
Mm.
because you've gone through trial and error. You've been trying things. While you're trying, you're thinking, you're imagining, your new ideas are coming. Maybe you go for dinner, have a conversation with somebody or your wife or your
Mm.
kids, come back and you're like, oh, that was a good idea. Maybe I should incorporate something here, right? But
Right,
AI is
right,
like 2 seconds done.
right.
It becomes boring. It starts becoming like your creativity, your creative juice, I think, will be disrupted and
Yeah,
affected because you
that's
haven't gone
interesting.
through the process.
Right.
Because we're
So
built for process, right?
that's a
If
great
you
point.
if you want to get fulfilled, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of like you need the challenge to have to awaken the creativity and to engage the creative
Yeah,
process. And if you don't have that challenge, it's kind of like what I was talking about of the apathy of generational Americans that I could easily find myself in and my kids could easily find themselves in. I continually find myself making it hard on my children intentionally. Um, and I tell them I could make this easy on you, but I'm choosing not to. And they
yeah.
get that. And I wonder if, first of all, if that's the right approach, but I wonder if, yeah, okay, that now you've given me something to really think about as far as how creativity is not just something that's there potentially, but could be something that could languish and potentially die within the human spirit. That's interesting.
It could die. I could die. Even the quality of cars will start looking kind of funny because everybody's depending on AI.
Hmm.
But if that's eliminated, then it's just boredom because you won't enjoy that 3 hour. You won't get to the zone. Get in the
Mm,
zone
mm.
where
Yeah,
everything disappears. Where
yeah,
you're hungry and you're not hungry anymore. You're not feeling cold, even though it's cold. You're like in the element.
yeah.
You don't feel that when you're in the AI. It's like it just does it for you. And you're, oh man, you're done. Then you go home and eat a sandwich.
I wonder
Come
if
back,
there's
do it for like 10
something
seconds.
of working through the difficulty to get to the zone that is very instructional to where AI will naturally remove that, at least in that process, which you got to wonder what is the cost at that point. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Huh.
Yeah, it's gonna hurt quite a bit. And the creative, even though people are excited as creative, I think people are more so excited about the time that they
Yeah.
don't have to spend to do something. They
Hmm.
could do it, but the time
Yeah.
has been dramatically reduced. But also what's affecting it is, like I said before, is you don't get to experience the
Mm.
process. Like there's this guy who came to Vegas. He had this bangle, something like this, and he's like, "Hey, I just made this myself, a couple weeks ago. Each took me 20 hours." And I was like, "Wow." I mean, it didn't look. I mean, it wasn't like a big deal, but the idea of the time it took just to make one piece
Yeah.
has so much meaning. Do you know
Right.
what I mean?
Right. Things like
Has
that
so
are going
much
to become far more valuable.
right. Has so much meaning. It's like, oh my gosh, it's incredible. I bought one.
So, so about, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, like going through architecture school, I made a lot of stuff. I made a bowl for my wife, a chest, and I really loved hands-on making stuff like that. Getting into photography, I'm making digital images. It's a little different. And one Christmas break, about 5 years ago, I made a coat tree just out of bent wood and pressure fittings and string. And I just sat down, zoned out, and tuned into making a thing. And it was so cathartic, so just like, wow, it didn't even look that good at the end. There's things that need to be improved. I was like, there was really, really something in that process that fed me. And what you're talking about and that experience, I have a joke that I came up with. It's kind of a riddle more though, that came from my own exploration and distancing from religion. And it goes like this, and I think you'll get it. What's the commonality or the similarity between fast food, fundamentalist types of religion, and pornography? They're all shortcuts.
Mm.
So fast food, drive in, get it, keep moving. You don't grow the food, you don't create the food, you don't make the food, you don't even sit down and hardly eat the food. It's stuff it and keep going. Fundamentalist religion tells you exactly what to do, exactly what to think, exactly what to believe, and pressures you to keep on course. You don't have that push and pull of relationship as present in fundamental religions. And then in pornography is the same thing. Instead of going out and wooing a woman, creating a relationship, creating commitment and security and understanding, and having that coming together and that release of those chemicals together as one, instead, you can just click, 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 spank, go away. And what are we left with? You know? And
a sad human.
Yeah, and in the same
just
way
said.
with AI, we're going to do that to our work process and our creativity. And we're surviving with fast food, but some of us are taking a huge toll. We're surviving, but fundamentalist religion can really get you. And the pornography is not a good thing for us really either. And I wonder if there's a parallel to be seen in the development of AI and what it's going to do to our creativity and work culture. So that's a great place to just end on a positive note. Philip, this has been really enjoyable for me. I really appreciate the diversity of your background compared to mine and your unique view on achieving and doing what you've wanted to do, coming from a different country and making it happen here. It gives me perspective on what I have just growing up in this country. And it's inspiring to see other people identify what we all now collectively have and be able to make something out of it and to value it. And it helps people who are already born here, like your children will probably have to go through. They'll probably have to come to terms of understanding why is this country valuable. They'll have dad in their ear being like, yeah, it's valuable because if you're not, you're gonna. So it's a really interesting conversation. I really appreciate it. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being an intentional parent, because then you're going to leave us more good humans to help push this forward. So thank you for all of that all the way around.
I'm really honored to be here. This was great. This was terrific. I'm so humbled. Thank you so much.
Cool. Well, thank you, Phil.